Quantum Network Breach and the Many Worlds Conspiracy. Part 1. The Call. Dowell Scutty's phone vibrated on the glass desk, shattering the midnight silence. He squinted at the illuminated caller ID, Quantum Networking Defense Unit. The name was as baffling as it was imposing. Dowell had never heard of any such unit until this moment. Heart quickening, he accepted the call. A curt, authoritative voice came on. "Mr. Dowell Scutty." It wasn't a question. The speaker clearly knew exactly who he was. Dowell managed a tentative "yes" before the voice steamrolled ahead. "You are required at the Quantum Networking Defense Unit HQ immediately." Dowell opened his mouth. Whether to ask for details or protest the brusqueness, he wasn't sure. But before he could form a word, the voice added, "Your escort is already waiting outside your residence," and then hung up without another word. In the abrupt silence that followed, Dowell realized he'd been holding his breath. He exhaled slowly, mind racing. Required? Escort? None of this felt right. What the hell is going on, he wondered. Sliding his chair back, he crossed the small living room of his downtown Las Vegas apartment to the window. Peeking through the blinds, he saw it. A black sedan idling at the curb in front of his building, unmarked and unassuming. The car's placement, diagonal across two spaces, made its intent unmistakable. It was there for him. Its headlights cut through the dry Nevada night. A lone beacon. Dowell glanced at the nightstand clock. Its red digits glowed 11:47 p.m. He peeked out again. The car's passenger door opened and a man in a dark suit stepped out, looking up toward his floor. Dowell's reflection in the window looked as unsettled as he felt. In his early 30s, he was pale from too many hours under fluorescent lab lights and computer screens. Slim and a bit stoop-shouldered, he didn't cut an imposing figure. His posture permanently affected by years hunched over quantum network consoles. He ran a hand through his sandy hair and blinked, eyes dry behind his contact lenses. He wasn't dressed for a sudden summons, just sweatpants and a faded t-shirt. With a sigh, he grabbed his jeans from the back of a chair and hastily pulled them on. Whatever this defense unit was, it sounded urgent and likely not patient with delays. As he dressed, Dowell's mind churned through possibilities. He had been a quantum physics network developer on the groundbreaking Quantum Network project, a closed experimental network spanning a vast stretch of the Nevada desert. The project had made headlines in the tech world a year ago for achieving something almost miraculous: instantaneous data transfer via quantum coupling. By exploiting entangled qubits, the network could transmit information with effectively zero latency, no signal delay at all, as if the servers were right next to each other even when separated by miles of barren land. It was a revolutionary step beyond even the most ambitious quantum internet prototypes. For instance, earlier in 2020, scientists had entangled photons across a 52-mile fiber network in Illinois as a test of a future quantum internet. That experiment demonstrated how entanglement could teleport information virtually instantaneously across distance, laying the groundwork for secure quantum communication networks. Dowell's team in Nevada had pushed this further, linking 3 quantum server hubs in Las Vegas to remote nodes scattered across the desert. This experimental network, often called the QNet in shorthand, spanned hundreds of kilometers of fiber and free space optics through the Nevada frontier. Entangled particle pairs formed the backbone of the system, enabling every bit transmitted in one location to be instantly reflected in another. The promise of such technology was immense. Data moving at the speed of quantum entanglement meant communications without lag, no matter the distance. 2 servers could couple their quantum states and behave as if directly connected. The implications for computing and communications were mind-bending. truly real-time cloud computing, high-frequency trading with zero latency, and military or space communications happening in an instant. Moreover, quantum information science suggested an inherent security. Any attempt to eavesdrop on a quantum link would disturb the quantum states and be noticed. In fact, experts love to tout that quantum states change when observed, so an outside listener would automatically alter the signal and reveal their presence. A quantum network, in theory, was ultra-secure and impossible to hack. Yet something had gone very wrong. Dowell felt a knot forming in his stomach as he recalled the last months he'd spent on the project before being relocated to another assignment. Back then, the network was still in beta and isolated from the public internet, an air-gapped experimental test bed, completely separate from any conventional network for safety. They had been testing data transfers between the Las Vegas quantum servers and a handful of desert outposts. The physics was cutting edge. Entangled photon emitters, quantum memory buffers, and quantum repeaters to maintain entanglement over long distances, despite loss and decoherence. The engineering challenges were enormous. The desert fiber lines had to be stabilized against heat and vibration, and sensitive photon detectors at remote stations had to be kept cryogenically cool. Despite these hurdles, the system worked. It achieved what no classical network could: near-instant, high-bandwidth communication with theoretically unbreakable encryption. However, it hadn't been smooth sailing. From the start, the team encountered strange glitches that no one fully understood. Data packets would arrive with slight deviations from what was sent, tiny corruptions that passed all classical error checks. At first, it was just a rarity, one bit flip in a billion, then a few more. The errors were small enough to attribute to interference or hardware noise. But the usual causes didn't quite fit. The pattern of errors was odd, almost as if the corrupted bits weren't random. Dowell still remembered poring over a hex dump of a ghost packet one late night in the lab, a packet of data that had appeared on the network with no clear origin. It was as if a phantom server had sent it. He and the other developers were baffled. They double-checked the sender IDs, routing tables, and system logs. The packet had headers that didn't match any known node in the network. For a while, they honestly thought it was just a software bug in the logging system or a quirk of the quantum hardware. And indeed, they uncovered a few unrelated bugs during the audit: missynchronized clock cycles, a memory leak in the classical control software, but nothing that would conjure phantom packets. The ghost packets continued sporadically. Ultimately, the team implemented compensation mechanisms to negate the glitches. They added robust error correction codes and redundant entangled channels to detect and fix any inconsistent bits. If two entangled qubits delivered conflicting information, the system would flag it and use a majority vote or a backup classical channel to correct it. This patchwork of compensations seemed to solve the issue. Over weeks of further testing, the network achieved stable performance. The ghost packets ceased, or at least fell below detectable levels. By the time of the public announcement of the quantum network breakthrough, everything appeared normal. Relieved and exhausted, Dowell had been reassigned to a different quantum computing project, leaving the day-to-day operations to others. Now, as he hastily saved some work on his laptop and grabbed it to take along, Dowell's mind was burning with questions. If they were calling him, escorting him no less, something must have happened on the QNet, something the current team couldn't handle. The voice on the phone had been stern and urgent. This wasn't a mere request to consult on a minor bug. It felt more like an emergency. But what? Dowell thought as he slipped his phone into his back pocket. What could have gone so wrong that a defense unit was involved? He swallowed. Whoever they were, they meant business. He hastily threw on a rumpled jacket over his t-shirt and grabbed his backpack. Into it he tossed a few precious personal tools, a couple of old-school USB drives loaded with his custom diagnostic scripts, and his trusty laptop running a custom Linux OS he'd tailored for quantum network analysis. If the defense unit was summoning him, something had gone very wrong with the network, and he wasn't going in unprepared. Minutes later, Dowell exited his building's lobby into the dry Nevada heat. The suited man, mid-40s crew cut, an earpiece visible, gave him a curt nod. "Mr. Scotty, this way." No introduction. Dowell followed wordlessly and slid into the back seat of the sedan. The door locks clicked immediately. The driver pulled into traffic without a word. As they sped through Las Vegas, Dowell tried to steady his breathing. He noted the route, heading north, out of the city. The HQ must be on the outskirts, he surmised, perhaps at one of the secure research complexes in the desert beyond Nellis Air Force Base. His silent escort in the front seat offered no clues, so Dowell was left to his racing thoughts. He recalled the network anomaly again, those corrupted packets that had nearly derailed the project months ago. They had never fully explained them. Could this call be related? Perhaps the problem had resurfaced? Or worse, maybe someone had exploited it. He knew how locked down the quantum test network was. The entire system was supposed to be sealed off from outside connections, running on dedicated entangled channels and private fiber loops under the desert. Firewalls guarded every classical interface. It was as isolated as a network could be, a fortress of quantum encrypted data. The sedan eventually turned off the highway onto a long private road flanked by scrub and sand. In the distance, a low-slung complex came into view, a cluster of modern structures bathed in the pale moonlight, surrounded by fencing and a perimeter of cameras. Not exactly Area 51, Dowell mused, but certainly high security. A sign by the gate became visible: Quantum Networking Defense Unit, Nevada Test Range. At the gate, armed security officers waved them through after a quick scan of badges and biometrics. The facility beyond was stark and high-tech. The main building was a sleek structure of glass and metal composite, reflecting the lunar disk above. As Dowell stepped out of the car, he noticed the silence, an eerie electronic hush. Likely the building was shielded to block electromagnetic interference, a necessity for sensitive quantum equipment. The air itself felt still. The suited escort led Dowell through the entrance, where a security checkpoint awaited. He was issued a temporary badge and guided down a maze of corridors that smelled of new electronics and strong coffee. Through a window, he glimpsed a server room with rows of equipment racks, likely one of the quantum routers or entanglement exchange nodes he'd helped design. It struck him that this defense unit must have been assembled quietly in the past half-year, perhaps as a response to whatever had been happening on the network. Finally, they reached a conference room. Inside, a lone figure stood in front of a wall-sized monitor displaying streams of network telemetry. The man turned as they entered. He was in his 50s, iron-grey hair, wearing a polo shirt with a small government logo and an ID tag. Not military, Dowell noted. Perhaps a senior civilian network security chief. His expression was all business. "Mr. Scotty, thank you for coming on such short notice," the man said, extending a hand. "I'm Carl Hansen, lead security officer for the QN Defense Unit." Dowell shook his hand. "I wasn't exactly given a choice," he replied wryly. Hansen allowed a ghost of a smile. "Apologies for the abrupt approach. We're dealing with a rather urgent and puzzling situation. We need your expertise as one of the original developers." He pointed to the large screen behind him. "Take a look." Dowell's eyes followed Hansen's gesture. On the monitor was a visualization of the quantum network's topology across Nevada. 3 big nodes glowed, the Las Vegas server hubs, connected by lines representing entangled photon links. Smaller nodes branched out across the desert, remote repeater stations, quantum routers, and sensor arrays forming a lattice. What caught his eye were several blinking red points on the map and scrolling log windows full of alerts. Hansen began to explain, his tone brisk. About 2 weeks ago, our network monitors started flagging unauthorized connection attempts. At first, just 1 or 2 pings on random nodes, then more, systematic scans of our system's ports and protocols. It looked like a classic intrusion attempt, except for one detail. These signals had no discernible origin. He brought up a log entry on the screen. See this? It's a handshake request hitting one of the quantum routers out near Mercury, Nevada. It repeats every few hours. Source address, null indeed. In the data field, Dowell saw that the incoming link had no standard IP or physical source. It was as if it materialized out of the ether. We thought it was a glitch in the monitoring software, Hansen continued. But then we started seeing data packets, real packets, hitting our firewalls from nowhere, as if the network had sprouted an invisible ghost node. Dowell felt a prickling on his skin. This was exactly the scenario he'd feared. And you're sure it's not a bug or a misconfiguration on our side? No rogue hardware accidentally connected? He asked. Hansen shook his head grimly. We've exhaustively checked, ran diagnostics on every router and repeater. We even physically isolated segments one by one. The patterns continued. It's not coming from any of our hardware. He pointed at another part of the log. It's coming through the quantum channel, but from an external source that technically doesn't exist in our network. Dowell stepped closer to the screen, mind racing. If the network was truly isolated, the only outside that could be tapping into the entangled links was something beyond the physical infrastructure entirely. No one else has access to our entangled photon pairs, correct? All the qubit links are generated in-house. Correct, Hansen said. We generate and distribute entangled pairs only within our closed loop. There are no cross-links to any other quantum system. We've been very careful about that. Dowell thought of global quantum initiatives, China's 4,600-kilometer quantum network, Europe's secure QKD links. None had reported phenomena like this. The Nevada testbed's instantaneous, high-bandwidth design was one of a kind. Could it be that it had opened a door no one else had even imagined? He ran a hand through his hair. You mentioned systematic scans. What exactly were they targeting? Hansen tapped a few keys and a list of services appeared. Primarily the classical control interfaces on the quantum nodes, ports on the router OS, login portals, even file directories on the servers. It's like someone is probing every conventional access point to see how our network is put together. Our firewalls have blocked and filtered each attempt, but they keep coming, and they're getting more frequent. Jesus, Dowell muttered under his breath. It was a network admin's worst nightmare, an intruder that had no business existing. And no idea where these signals originate? There's absolutely no trace in the classical sense? None, Hansen affirmed. Then, after a short pause, it's like someone broadcasting from the bloody hell, he almost snapped. He paused, taking a deep breath. Everett Wheeler telephone, Dowell mumbled involuntarily. Hansen glared at him expectantly. Dowell's mind was shuffling around memories of back when he worked on the network. He tried to approach it analytically, as he would a problem in code. What could explain an isolated network getting external scans? If it wasn't a conventional intrusion, no physical or classical network access, the explanation had to lie in the very quantum nature of the system. He swallowed hard as a half-forgotten theoretical debate resurfaced in his memory. During the early design phase of the QNet, The scientific team had often argued about the deep quantum mechanics at play. They all used the quantum technology, but they didn't all agree on what it meant under the hood. Some of the physicists on the project were old-school Copenhagen interpretation adherents. They insisted that whenever they measured or used the entangled qubits, the wave function collapsed and yielded a result. End of story. In the Copenhagen view, the quantum math was just a tool to calculate probabilities. Once a measurement happened, that was that. The outcome became real, and the other possibilities simply vanished. The wave function collapse in that interpretation is basically an update of the observer's knowledge, not a physical travel of waves. Other members of the team, especially the younger theorists, favored the more radical many-worlds interpretation, MWI. According to MWI, the wave function never truly collapses. Instead, it splits, and all possible outcomes occur each in a separate parallel world. Measure an entangled qubit, and you don't destroy the other outcomes. You just branch into different realities for each outcome. MWI implies a multiverse of countless parallel, non-communicating worlds coexisting, each as real as ours, but each following a different outcome of every quantum event. At the time, these debates had felt esoteric, almost philosophical. Dowell, being an engineer at heart, tried to stay out of those arguments and focus on making the system work. Still, he couldn't avoid hearing them. One argument in particular now sent a prickling chill down his spine. Dr. Abrahams, a senior quantum theorist on the project, had raised a provocative question. What if building a network on entanglement creates pathways not just through space, but elsewhere? He had pointed out a little-known thought experiment by physicist Joseph Polchinski. Polchinski speculated that if quantum mechanics had any small non-linear deviations from the textbook equations, it might be possible to send messages between parallel worlds, an Everett-Wheeler telephone, as he called it. In standard quantum theory, nothing can pass between the many worlds branch universes. They are completely isolated by design. But Polchinski showed that with a tiny tweak to the theory, a measurement in one universe could influence another, effectively allowing communication across the divide. Dr. Abrahams had dramatically warned, half in jest, if you guys manage to accidentally create an Everett-Wheeler telephone with this network, don't be surprised if someone answers on the other side. The room had laughed nervously, and the project director swiftly called the discussion back to practical matters. After all, every experiment and every piece of evidence so far indicated that quantum mechanics is perfectly linear, and that MWI's alternate worlds remain forever separate. There was no known way to interact with another branch of reality. Those other worlds, if they existed, were supposed to be non-communicating by definition. Dowell wasn't laughing now. He felt that chill again, deep in his gut. Could that crazy idea be coming true? The ghost packets, unsourced scans. It was as if someone, or something, had found a way to reach into their closed quantum network from the outside. Not from another country or a hacker's basement, but perhaps from outside their world altogether. The idea was outrageous, bordering on science fiction, and yet so was the technology he had helped build. He lifted his eyes towards Hansen. The Quantum Networking Defense Unit clearly had data, and they wanted him on hand to make sense of it. "Those probes," said Dowell slowly. "They are reaching out. The phone is ringing." Hansen raised an eyebrow, studying Dowell intently. "I see you've made the connections." He turned to the keyboard, paused just long enough to let the tension deepen, then tapped a key. The main display flickered to a root directory listing from the core router that anchored the Las Vegas quantum backbone. Amid the critical system files, one name glowed in red: message.txt. "We found this at 4:17 local time," Hansen stated, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "No access logs, no quantum signature on the transfer. It simply appeared. As if written directly onto the platter by a ghost," he said quietly, fingers tapping deliberately on the keys. The sound resonated softly in the tense silence as he typed the command. Cat msg.text. The room fell silent as the console printed the content of the file, "We know how." Dowell's vision blurred momentarily, knees buckling. He stumbled back and collapsed into a nearby chair, heart hammering wildly. Hansen's eyes never left him. "Mr. Scotty," he said quietly, "it seems we have an unprecedented security breach on our hands, and it appears you're the best hope we've got for figuring out just who or what we're dealing with."